let's tackle the topic at hand. So today we're talking about hiring a fundraising or a database consultant. And I'm actually curious because I saw a lot of folks on the Razor's Edge forum were talking about the webinar and kind of asking about, pricing and like if I'm going to do some side hustle stuff. So we put together a poll. I'm just curious what people are most interested in. Let me launch that poll. Hold on. Because if it turns out if everybody is here just to talk about like, hey, what should I charge if I do like consulting on the side, then we can just dive right to that, right? We skip all the boring stuff that you're not here for, and we can get to the heart of it. While people are filling that out, I'll do introduction. So I am Nic Prenger, founder of Prenger Solutions Group, which looks like this. We are a boutique fundraising firm based here in Omaha with folks all over the country. We do fundraising consulting, we do annual appeal management, a lot of Razor's Edge database administration, which I think is how a lot of the folks on this call know us. And we do some fundraising automation. Okay. All right, we got a little bit of everything on the poll here. I will share the results here. Ashley, tell me if those are showing up.
Yep, I can see them.
Good. Okay, so hiring a database consultant at the top, but then also doing work as database consultant, a little bit on fundraising. Okay, so we'll touch on all those things. Today might be a quicker webinar than normal. We'll see, I guess. But we want to get to a lot of the Q&A for everybody here. So PSG, we do a whole bunch of stuff. We're a consulting firm. In the course of raising millions of dollars, tens of millions of dollars for our clients, we actually developed a couple software products to make our lives easier, which are now out in the marketplace. Many of you on the call today, I know, use Ask Genius. Ask Genius is this amazing tool, which basically helps you set the perfect ask amount for everybody on your mailing list. So if you're sending out direct mail, if you're doing a digital fundraising appeal, you've got 1,000 or 10,000 or 100,000 different donors. Ask Genius will let you set the algorithm if you want to be aggressive or conservative. It goes through all the giving history and all the data about each donor, sets a perfect amount so that you raise more money. It's pretty slick. If you haven't checked it out, you should. And then we have our newest product, which is flying off the shelves, so much so that it's overwhelming us a bit. It's called Automate Genius. And Andy works with the team on that. This is what Stacy and Austin have been working on for so long. Automate Genius connects your Razor's Edge NXT to Power Automate. And then we do a whole bunch of cool stuff. We connect through Automate to Outlook and Word and a bunch of other things. Short version is you can do a whole bunch of amazing things, like wake up in the morning, open your laptop, and have emails written for you to donors. Or as a database manager, you can get alerts when wonky things happen, like somebody created a dupe inside of your database. All sorts of fun stuff. Don't need to get into that, but if you haven't checked it out, you should. If you're interested in any of these topics, we do these webinars all the time, right? So about every 3 weeks or so, we'll do something new. Rob on our team can drop this into the chat. But we've got a whole page up, and I'm very proud of this. It used to be a little bit more disorganized. Rob has been working hard on this, and now we have everything that we've done in one place. So we're always getting emails about, hey, what was that webinar you did on how to design a donation page? Or what was the webinar about the best, most effective fundraising letter? All of that is now in one spot. It's on the Ask Genius website. You can check it out. Okay. Final item. Yes, we're recording this. Yes, we will send you the slides as always. So look for that later today or by early tomorrow morning. We'll always send you, the recap of what we've done. All right. Ashley, have you ever heard any jokes about consultants before?
Yes. Yes, the big ones are that, they can kind of come in, tell you what to do, and then they get to leave, and, you're left carrying the ball. So
that's exactly right. There's as many jokes about consultants as there are about attorneys, right? A consultant is the most popular. Consultant is someone who borrows your watch to tell you what time it is, and then they get to keep the watch, right? That's how you pay them. I have been consulting now for, I think, 20 years. So I was a prosecutor for a hot minute, and then I joined a consulting firm. Ashley, what's your background here? So you've been consulting, and even before that, you had a pretty good career.
Yep. So before that, fundraising and marketing, leading development teams at some large nonprofits. So came from that world of grant writing, appeals, capital campaigns, events, lots of events, that kind of thing.
Lots of events. And Andy, before you were a consultant that borrows somebody's watch to tell them what time it is, what were you doing?
I spent a lot of time working in a development office myself as a major and planned gift fundraiser, and then went on to actually run a small shop. And that's where I kind of fell in love with the idea of I need to know how to do everything. So I taught myself a bunch of things I didn't know, because no longer did I have a guy that could run reports or queries or, you know, do some of those things, and really kind of fell in love with the data side too. So I'm kind of a unicorn in that I get the fundraising component of it, but I also understand the, you know, meat and potatoes of kind of the database and what it means to have an important or clean database. So yeah, a little bit of both.
Awesome. And for the folks that don't know, so Ashley runs our whole consulting division, our fundraising side, where we've got lots of clients paying us to raise them, you know, tens of millions of dollars a year. Andy runs our digital side, which is a razor's edge practice and our outsourced database administration and stuff like that, plus Automate Genius. So you've got a little bit of both on this call, whole bunch of expertise. Let's talk first, Ashley, let's talk about fundraising consulting first, since people, a couple of people did say they wanted to learn a little bit about this. Fundraising consultant, let's talk about the types of consultants, okay? Really boils down to 4 different kinds. If you're going to hire a fundraising consulting firm, it's going to come to one of these 4. Okay, and we're going to talk very briefly about each with an example from here in Omaha. A general fundraising firm, specialty fundraising firm, a vendor plus consulting, or like a capital campaign firm. So when we're talking about general fundraising firm, any city in America has probably a dozen of these, right? In Omaha, you could probably think of a bunch more. I just grabbed Strawhecker. It's a good general purpose fundraising firm. It's been around a long time. The things they do, and again, whatever city you're in, right? If you're in Dallas or if you're in Des Moines, Iowa, if you're in Spokane, Washington, there's somebody that's hung up a shingle and has a small shop that can help with fundraising stuff. They're usually good at a lot of different things, right? From studies and capital campaigns, they can help you with marketing materials, maybe train your board, provide resources. Generally pretty affordable. Usually it's retainer based, but sometimes it can be a project if they're like running a campaign for you. But they do lots of different stuff. Ashley, have you ever interacted with anything more on the general fundraising firm?
Oh, here and there throughout the years, but you've got it down. They know things and can advise you, and then they've got connections to then pass you along to.
A great resource if you're looking for things like, hey, I'm looking for a job description, I'm looking for a pledge card, I'm looking for something like they always have the connections to that. They've seen a lot. Usually it's somebody who used to be head of advancement somewhere or head of development for a college or university, went out on their own. Great folks, very useful. If you're a small shop, that's probably the only thing you're going to be using, right? If you're not a pretty big organization raising more than $1 million a year, you're probably just always going to stick with the general fundraising firm. Then you've got specialty fundraising firms. My favorite example of this would be us, right? PSG. So which is all we ever wanted to be, and then we got sucked into this whole software world, right? With Ask Genius and Automate Genius and all this stuff. I think we're a good example, and there's PSGs in every niche, right? And our niche is Catholic dioceses. So there's 180 Catholic dioceses. We work with more than 100 of them. We help them run annual appeals, right? So 5 million, 10 million, 20 million a year. Organizations like PSG, what if you're a hospital, right? There are niche hospital consulting agencies that know all about grateful patients, and they know that industry inside and out. That's the main thing you're reaching out to them for. They know your industry inside and out. Different levels of service. So some offer project management, some offer more of a direct mail consulting. It all just depends on who you're working with. What we do, and I know others do as well, we do a whole bunch of research in our niche, right? So our superpower is we know fundraising, and we really know this world of Catholic dioceses, right? And annual appeals, and what direct mail does, and what the in-person appeal does, and who the vendors are in the space, and how dioceses are using lockboxes. Like that is what we know inside and out. Same if you're in a hospital, if you're in a high school, if you're in a college or universities, there's all sorts of specialty firms, highly specialized. Generally speaking, they turn down work outside their zone. That's the difference. If you're a generalist, anybody that calls, you're picking up the phone, right? You're like, yes, we can do board training. Yes, we can do strategic planning. Yes, I can run your campaign. At PSG, we say no more often than we say yes, right? Unless you are in our lane and what we're really good at, we're going to say no, right? We like to keep it specialized. Did I miss anything, Ashley?
No, I think that's spot on. We definitely stick in our lane as far as the consulting team goes, and we can specialize in that. That way we know the results, and we have data proven results from that we can carry over.
Able to do a lot of A/B testing, right? The nice thing about running in a niche is you can compare clients, right? So In our world, we can run an A/B test and find out which letter version works better for our clients, and we can share that with the wider universe. Same in the other different niches. Vendor plus consulting. This is usually it. I'm trying to think if there's an example outside of a printer, but what we've seen is there's a whole lot of printers who are very good, right? Who have been printing fundraising material for a long time. In our world, this would be like Cathedral here, Letter Concepts, OSV, which is largely known as Our Sunday Visitor, but they do consulting. Subtle Strauss, maybe a little bit, but a printer who started out doing design work, started out doing printing work, and then kind of expanded from there. They had a bunch of clients, a lot of nonprofit organizations, and they said, well, we could probably help you with graphic design as well, because that was a need they had. So they added graphic design. Then eventually you add some fundraising consulting. The only thing to know here is that they still largely bill based on print volume. So what you're getting is a really good printer, and then maybe a little bit extra consulting on the side to help you with letters or something like that. But the core of it is you're buying sheets of paper, right, and postage. That's the core of it. So this is a good solution for a lot. I think I know Sarah Ligo on our team when she was working at the food bank had a great vendor that was largely a printer, but then did a little consulting on the side. So that's another option to look at. Finally, capital campaign firm, big one that most people know, CCS Fundraising. I used to be president of a firm called the Steyer Group. Rob worked there as well, and about half of PSG worked at Steyer Group at one point or another. What these organizations do, so CCS, Steyer Group, there's a bunch more in the niche. High cost, right? High cost, high service, and hands-on assistance. This is the consulting firm that if you want to hire them, they're probably going to move somebody to your town, right? If I'm running a campaign in, Dubuque, Iowa, and I'm hiring CCS, somebody from CCS is moving to Dubuque, Iowa for a year to really roll up their sleeves and run that effort.
They'll love it here too, by the way.
It's the, what is it? The Rome of Eastern Iowa. What is it?
Masterpiece on the Mississippi.
I love it. It is. How many? You got like a dozen colleges there, don't you? Like they're all
Yes.
highly educated town, Dubuque, Iowa. Typically raising millions of dollars. This is what you're doing for a special project. If you need to go raise 5 million, 10 million, $100 million, you're going with a specialized firm where that's what they do, right? Capital campaigns. Okay, if you have questions, so that's a brief overview of the different kinds of fundraising firms that you can hire. If you have questions about pricing, about how it works, about what goes wrong, please let us know. I'm going to keep moving because I want to make sure we get to the database stuff, because I know that's kind of the focus for a lot of people on the call. But if you have questions about hiring a fundraising consultant, put it in the Q&A, or afterwards, feel free. Shoot me an email. I'll hop on a call. We've got a whole bunch of experience here. We can always tell you about what works, what doesn't, what to avoid, everything else. All right. Andy, you're up. We're going to talk about database consulting now, okay? Excuse me. Types of database consultants. This is a little bit simpler, right? There's two. And I'll stick with Razor's Edge just because I know that's the bulk of the folks on the call here today are Razor's Edge folks. So they're database consulting firms, right? Where you can hire a company and this is what we do. There's some great ones out there. And if you've been to BBCon, you've met all of these folks, right? So you got Zeidman, you've got Zuri, you've got Simplify, which was before that was something else. Impact is great, Brightmind. PSG, we also do this, right? So Ashley's team does fundraising consulting in our niche. Andy and his team do database consulting in our niche, right? So when you hire a firm, they're going to know what the heck they're doing. They've got it all packaged up. They'll probably be able to guide you on exactly what the scope of the project should be and how long it would take. There's also, so that's one route. Then there's also independent contractors, okay? And I grabbed a couple of folks that are pretty well known, again, from that Razor's Edge forum. You've got Sandy, you've got Bill Connors, you've got a friend Craig, who we've worked with at PSG. I think is a pretty good example of this. And then you've got, I don't know, Andy, what, 50,000 other?
Many. More and more coming every day.
There's a whole lot of people that know Razor's Edge and that do a little bit of stuff like this on the side, okay?
Yep.
So like a Sandy or a Bill, they're fantastic. They know this inside and out. They're kind of like a firm unto themselves. And in many ways, maybe they are firms. Maybe they have more than just them working for them. But it's a little bit less than like a company that's got, 20, 50, 100 people that are doing this. They're still rolling up their sleeves and doing a lot of the work themselves. Typical projects that you're going to see. And again, when you have questions, hit the Q&A button. They'll pop up on our screen and we'll make sure to answer all of them. I know people are wondering what do things cost and how long does stuff take, and we're going to get to that here shortly. So typical projects. Andy, walk me through As I see it, there's like three things that we get called to do. Is this accurate?
I think, yeah, for the most part, those are accurate. So the database cleanup where they kind of know what's wrong and we just got to get in there and really standardize, organize things. And generally what we would do is leave them kind of a don't let this happen again, and here's how to not let it happen again, sort of a cheat sheet. Assess the situation tends to be a little bit bigger of a project for us to take on. We're really looking at doing a database audit. So we're looking at all the fields, we're looking at inconsistencies in the data, how things were entered, hierarchy of campaign, appeal, fund, those kinds of things, and then really looking at how does that kind of work within best practices, right? So to your point earlier, Nick, we know what we know within our niche. We can say the typical diocesan database is set up this way, or the typical, museum database or health foundation database is set up this way, to really kind of let them know where they should be and give them a clear path to that. Whether they want us to do that or not is kind of the next step,
Right.
because that's generally the big scary project at the bottom. So we can tell them what's bad and leave them with kind of the here's how you got to do it. And some will say, you're more familiar with it. Get in there, do what you need to do, organize it. And again, most people want to be best practice or kind of, best in class. They just don't know how to get there.
Yeah.
And when you have the analytical minds, the nerds that we call ourselves here in the Razor's Edge database world, or, Virtuous, some of the other CRMs out there too, we know where it needs to go, and it doesn't intimidate us as much because we have that kind of comfortability, that confidence to get in there and actually do the work.
Something I see a lot is these requests come in. It's rare that we have a client that knows even which bucket they fall in. Like typically the phone call is something like X person retired, or we're going through transition, or just like, look, we've put this off for years. We have a mess. And that's about as much as they can describe candidly. And that's okay. So for folks on the call, they're looking to hire someone. That's a very normal thing, right? Contact an agency and then just explain your situation. On the data cleanup, I want to put a little finer point on this. So like a data cleanup, Andy, is that like, hey, we've had volunteers entering stuff and some of them use all caps and some of them are putting first name and some are putting salary. Is that what we're talking about?
Yeah, I would say a lot of the cleanup is generally kind of like the addressee and salutation fields, right? Where like sometimes streets spelled out, sometimes it's not,
Right.
Sometimes I'm in the database as Andy, and sometimes I'm in the database also as Andrew, right? Or Andy, and then Andy and Kara have a separate record. I was actually working with a client this morning that we're wondering why certain people weren't showing up on a report. And it's like, well, because they're in there twice. And this record gave to the appeal last year, and this record didn't give to the appeal last year, right? So it's a lot of those kinds of things. I would say typically the cleanup projects are, it's just kind of identifying, like I said, the inconsistencies in the data,
Yep.
standardizing it, and then making sure it doesn't happen again.
In those cases, the client, and this is a great use of a consultant. I mean, honestly, like the client, maybe you don't have the bandwidth, maybe you don't have time, maybe you're going through transition, but they know they want to get it better. They want husbands and wives to be connected on one record. Like you can outsource that for pretty cheaply, honestly. Let somebody bang away at it on nights and weekends, and suddenly you get a shiny new database. That's great. The assess our situation, what I've seen a lot more of too, is not just looking at like Razor's Edge or Virtuous, the database, but also like how they're connected to the other stuff. We call it spaghetti internally, but how are you connected? What are you using for email, right? And how is that going out? What are you using for an online giving vendor? Like there are so many cool technologies out there for nonprofits to use. We find ourselves more and more getting called in and be like, hey, could you take a look at what I guess a tech person would call a tech stack? Like look at our fundraising tech stack from online giving provider, bulk email, private email, social media stuff, whatever we're doing. How do we make all this stuff connect together? And that does take some specialized knowledge, right?
One of the things, Nick, too, I think with the assess our situation, and we've seen it more and more recently, for some reason, all finance departments are like switching to different tech, right? So it's kind of like,
feel like every finance
the finance office is switching to something new. And so we need to make our database like sync with what they're doing, but we don't know how to do that. So can you kind of come in and, play moderator between development and finance to kind of figure some of those things out? So we've done that. The other point I wanted to make about the data cleanup, you kind of mentioned, like most people don't know what they don't know. They just know it's not great. The reason why they know it's not great is because they have angry donors calling them saying, hey, my spouse has been dead for 10 years. Why in the heck are you still sending me mail? Or why are you asking me to donate to your appeal? And I have 5 different letters from the same organization. Like I have 5 appeal letters that all say the same thing. Like you're wasting money. Why should I give you money? Right. So
Yeah.
I think a lot of times that's where the organization's kind of like, oh man, like we're in trouble. We need help again. And so they look to somebody like us to say, how can we clean this up? And we need to do it right now.
One final point here, and this could be controversial with our audience, right? But I want to bring it up. It's because we have a lot of DBAs that attend all of these. We also get quite a few calls, I know other organizations do as well, where it's the executive director kind of wants a check on the DBA. Like, hey, we've wanted this report or this thing to happen for like 5 years. And Joe, our DBA, tells us it's impossible. And finally, the executive director is like, I need somebody to tell me, is this really impossible, or does Joe just like not know how to do it or something? Again, controversial because I know our audience as us, we're outsourced DBAs, will bristle at that thought, but it happens all the time. So just know that if you're in an organization and there's that friction, right? If you're the DBA and there's friction between you and the leadership on like what can be done or the best way to do it, at some point that friction, if not resolved, will lead to a consultant being called in to either back you up and say, yes, this person's absolutely right, or no, there's better ways to do this.
And
So
the latter is more common. So when we get called in,
yes,
the DBAs start to sweat a little bit because they're like, uh-oh, my cushy job, like somebody else knows what I know, so I better figure out a way to make this happen.
yes. And we can get into that. So if you have questions on that, hit the Q&A button or put something in the chat. We can talk more about it if you want. I don't want to anger all of our audience, but I want to be real about what we see
I
happen.
just saw half the participants leave this webinar. No, I'm kidding.
They left to go email their boss and say, hey, by the way, I've been thinking,
weird.
maybe we can distribute that report the way that you wanted to. All right, so that's a perfect segue. Let's talk about good engagements, bad engagements. And some of this might be common sense, but it's common sense for a reason. A good engagement. There's nothing better than a good engagement. Like the client, you talk to them, you understand exactly what they need, you spell out what it's going to look like, and you both agree on when we're done and we're all like high-fiving, this is why. And honestly, that's a great way to frame it. So those of you that are doing side hustles, start doing this. Have the conversation with your potential client beforehand and say, in our minds, let's imagine a period where we're both ecstatic about this project. Why are we ecstatic? Why are we so excited? And that will tell you exactly what you need to do. Client's going to say, because finally I can get the reports I need, because donors aren't going to call and be angry because they, didn't get their tax receipt, and we're going to save a whole bunch of time or whatever it might be. So that's a good consulting engagement. Bad's going to be the flip side, right? If it's mushy, if it's vague. And I want to be clear, it's okay to be mushy and vague at the beginning. That's how every phone call starts. Hey, our system, it's just not right. I want to get it better. I can't really put my finger on it. That's fine, but you can't start the project until the consulting either person or a freelancer or the firm really understands and can quantify for you, okay, here's what we're going to do. Unclear goals, or worse, if leadership's not involved, right? If there's no buy-in from the folks above, it's going nowhere. Everyone's going to be unhappy. Okay. Andy, did I miss anything?
I don't think so. Yeah, I mean, I've experienced both good and bad engagements. So we can talk, so we're blue in the face. I think, the other piece with the bad engagement, I will say, it's not just like the details of the project aren't defined, but often deadlines aren't. So if you're not pushing them to like action steps or, kind of, we need to do this. I mean, this is a situation where this client could become your client for a lifetime, and you don't want that because ideally you're doing the project and you're on to the next, right? So
Yeah.
if it's a bad engagement, it's because you allowed it to just kind of drag on and drag on and drag on, and you don't want that. And the client sometimes just doesn't care.
We've got one of our last slides too, Ashley. We're going to talk some real talk about what it's like being a consultant on that exact topic, right? Like,
Right.
because that happens almost all the time, right? Like you want to move along. So we're going to talk specifically some strategies and like what we see in the consulting world for keeping something on time. Okay. What things cost? Everybody's curious about this. I'm going to give you a very lawyerly answer, right? It depends. Like on all of them, it depends. But to give you some sense, for a data cleanup project, right? The smallest one I've ever seen might be like $2,000, and that's a Nick, Andy. We want somebody to go through and change all of the streets which have been spelled out to ST. You know what I mean? Like just some sort of a standardization type thing for a small shop. Don't go to a firm for that. Find an independent consultant that wants to do it on a night or weekend, all the way up to a big one. If you're a big, giant organization and it's, you have a clearly defined project, but it's going to take a lot of global exports. I mean, Andy, I'm thinking of stuff we've done I don't know how clients got that way, but like where the constituent IDs were all a mess, right? And they're like, some had letters, some were like three digits, some were like 11, like just stuff like that is a lift, right?
Yep.
Okay. Or maybe we did a webinar. Rob, this is the first link we can share. We're wondering how many webinars we'd call back to. Our last webinar, I think we talked about the best way to set up your campaigns and funds and appeals. And if you want to switch, right, and make, change your whole model of what you're doing for appeals and package codes, that's a big cleanup project. That's going to put you on the higher end. Assess our situation, mid-range, $15,000, $20,000, $30,000. This is where an organization is coming in. They're looking at your setup, Virtuous or Razor's Edge. They're digging in. They're telling you about your data health. They're telling you about all the data cleanup you probably need. But then they're also saying, you have too many vendors here. You don't need all of these things. And we find ourselves saying that a lot. In the old days, you would have needed an email provider, but now you can do it through NXT, or you don't need a separate online giving vendor anymore. That's a separate silo of data. You can use BBMS, or you can use Virtuous, or whatever it might be. Big scary project, 50 plus. I mean, again, there's some that'll be less than this, but like we're talking like a data like an implementation, right? You're moving from Salesforce to Virtuous, or you move from Razor's Edge to Sales, whatever it might be. That's going to be a big deal, right? And it's going to be a big chunk of change to do it right, because it's something that's mission critical. You don't want to screw it up. It's worth every penny. Okay. Big trend we've seen. And we've landed in this, again, not with any sort of foresight, but we've just kind of followed where our clients were going. This might be controversial too, as I think about it. We got a lot of DBAs on here. This is the worst webinar they've ever attended. They're like,
the reviews are going to be awful on this one, by the way.
A lot of 1-star reviews after this one, after we hang up today. All right, DBAs, but you need to be aware of this. So let's all have clear eyes. Many organizations are now outsourcing that database administrator position. When we say DBA, we mean database administrator. The top nerd at your fundraising office who's in charge of Salesforce, Virtuous, Razor's Edge, Bloomerang, Donor Perfect, whatever it might be. Why are they doing that? And we've seen it. It is happening before COVID. It's accelerated massively since COVID. It's also accelerated because a lot of folks that were in that role are retiring. That's kind of where we're at right now. So one good news is it's becoming more of a leadership role. Organizations realize now they want to be data driven. There's much more that they can do with their data than in the years past. 20 years ago, we didn't talk as much about being a data-driven organization, right? You just want to be a good fundraiser and send out good direct mail and build relationships. Now people are realizing, wow, the data can tell a story. We've got to extract this. There's all sorts of really technical things we need to know. So the role is becoming higher up on the food chain. Many DBAs are now at the leadership table, right, at their organization. So it's not just you're the top person in charge of gift processing. It's we want you to be a leader and help us decide what are the segments that we're going to do on our mailing, right? When are we going to set things up? What's our timeline need to be based on the data? And it's hard to find that skill, candidly. It's hard to find really high quality DBAs. So here's the good news. If you're great at your job, you are irreplaceable, right? And if you're at an organization right now and they're not paying you very much, you can get a better job where they're paying you more. It is really hard to find incredibly high quality DBAs. PSG, we find them, we hoard them. We don't ever let them see the outside world, because when you find a DBA that knows what they're doing, they're worth their weight in gold. It's also difficult to train people into that position. Lots of nonprofits, you'll hire, right? Ashley, you've been in this role before, right? Where you have to hire, when you're at a nonprofit, you don't have the latitude to hire and pay well. Is that correct?
That's absolutely correct. So it's hard to find the right people from the beginning, because the pay is not where you always want it to be at. And then you find somebody who is willing to come in, and you don't have the opportunities to train them up. It's kind of baptism by fire. You have to jump into the role and just go, which makes it hard.
Yeah. I want to highlight, so somebody just dropped into the Q&A, and I want to jump ahead because it's such a great point. This person said, hey, we joke about DBA saying I don't really know how to do so-and-so, or in this topic. And this person said, but try calling into Blackbaud and getting their customer support to help us. So this is a frustration. So what this person is saying is, I'm in this role, I want to grow into it, I want to be great. I don't have the channels to get there, right? And if you're the top person at your organization, that's absolutely true. It's really difficult to train into that high quality position. And I don't know an answer to that. The reason that people are outsourcing is because this is also true, whether they realize it or not. So they go to a firm where at least that firm has a whole bunch of people that together, know how to do everything.
And I think that's an important point. Within our the digital services team at PSG, right? I mean, we're fortunate in that even in the clients that we're working with, we'd like to think that we know most things about the databases we're working in, but admittedly, none of us know all the things, right? And so being able to, kind of bounce those ideas off of somebody else at the firm, we can often get an answer relatively quickly through the Zoom chat, right? And to your point about Blackbaud customer support, a lot of our clients will say, you figured out the problem that we had before Blackbaud could or even knew what the problem was, right? So, and again, that's not a knock on Blackbaud, but we have come a long way, and we have really that kind of brain trust of people who can kind of share ideas across each other. The other thing that I wanted to mention real quick about the difficult to train people into the position, at most nonprofits, no one in that nonprofit knows how to do any of the DBA work. So it's not like somebody leaves and your superior is going to come in and tell you how to do all the things. They're expecting you to come in and teach them the things that they don't know because they don't know them, right? So it is really a challenge. Like you're the person. And if you don't have a peer group or, just of colleagues from past jobs, or, we talked about that Razor's Edge users group earlier, that is a critical piece for many of the people in this role. Like those are your peer buddies, right? Like you can, again, as we do internally, bounce ideas off of people. How do I do this? Does anybody else have these issues? Like that's what it becomes. But yeah, at the organization, no one's going to teach you how to do your job. They're hiring you in the hopes that you know how to do the job and can teach them what they don't know.
Yeah. And it's wild, but that is the way the environment is shaping up. I don't see this changing, right? Like the frustration with your CRM vendor, your frustration with their customer support, right? I don't see that changing. That's just the way, as more and more software companies are bought by hedge funds and bought by private equity, right? Whose job is to group all these things together and just turn a profit, more so than build out great customer experience teams. It's just going to lead to more organizations like us, like Zeidman, I want to mention all of them, Zuri, Bill Connor, Sandy. Like there's great people out there because they've managed to master that institutional knowledge that used to be at the company, and now you have to go to a third party to get it, right? And for better or worse, that's going to lead your organizations to outsource the DBA role. And I want to be clear, Andy's right. We have an amazing team. This is not a sales pitch. Like in fact, I don't know that we have the bandwidth to take anybody else on, but I want to be clear. There are great firms out there. When we talk about like what we've done at PSG, I'm not trying to sell any of you on our services. Obviously, we love working with you, but there's all sorts of great vendors out there that can do this work for you. I just share that because we put these webinars on. That's our goal is just to educate, right? We want to make sure that we're providing high value to no matter what vendor you're using. Final point, or one of the final 2 points here, no risk of downtime. A lot of organizations say, look, we had Joe in this role, and then Joe's getting older, or he wants to scale back time, or maybe he's taking vacations and stuff. We can't have vacations because we don't have somebody to fill in for him and process gifts or whatever it might be. Like outsourcing to a firm, again, whether it's PSG or somewhere else, there is no downtime, right? If Andy is your DBA and Andy's out of town, then Rob's going to pick up the slack, right, and cover it. So like you have that backup, and it's less important just after COVID to be on site. That's not as important as it was because you can outsource, gifts to lockboxes. You can have different gift processors. There's, depending on how large your organization is, there may be no reason that your DBA needs to be there in person, right? They could be more valuable to you, which is also helpful if you're an organization that's not in a huge metro. You know how hard it is to find good Razor's Edge people as it is, but if you're in Carroll, Iowa, right, trying to find someone that lives in Carroll, Iowa that also knows Razor's Edge is going to be nearly impossible. Okay, side hustling. I think a lot of people are here for this. Let's say you're a DBA right now. You're working at an organization. Maybe you're not working 40 hours a week. Maybe you are, but you want to do some nights and weekends. Maybe you want to dip your toe just into this consulting, make a little extra money on the side. Why drive an Uber when you can use your skills that and make people happy, make a little money? So Andy, really, I just have a couple. These are the questions we get a lot, right? So yeah. I can take them or you can take them on. Let's start with the first one. Like if you're in that role, you're a DBA, you want to start doing a little side hustle. Should you go to one of these firms or should you just start doing stuff on your own? What do you think?
It's interesting. Some people will go to a firm because the firm is really the one that then kind of seeks out the clients, right? So if you're like, I know how to do the work, but I don't know how to like make the sales pitch as to like, hey, I'm the person for your firm. It's nice to be able, and we have people who are like that, right? Like they come to us and say, hey, if you've got work, I'm willing to do it, but they're not out there actively trying to like source work themselves. And others are, whether they live in like a larger metro where they've kind of made a name for themselves as a database guru, and people are asking them, hey, can you do this? Can you do that? They might have a little bit more opportunity. So it's just a matter of, do you want to be kind of the salesperson and the doer, or do you want to just be the doer? I think is really the answer to that question. And again, I think the other piece of it too is it's not just about finding the gigs, it's about finding the gigs that, make the right fit. Like, there are some people who are like, they don't want to do gigs in the summer because they've got kids home from school, and nights and weekends are different than, what they are, at different times of the year. Or some people are just looking to pick up extra hours during holiday season because they wanted to buy Christmas presents, or maybe they're saving up, for Taylor Swift tickets or something like that.
Saving up for Wild, brother. I would say I'm of the firm belief, like if you're in that role, like think of the DBAs on this call that are wanting to do a little, if you haven't ever done the consulting, go to a firm first, because you can always do your own stuff. Like talk to a firm, because you're going to get hours. Like we use independent contractors all the time. So we pay hourly, and here's a defined project. If you're great, right? Here's a defined project, and you can do that'll dip your toes into it. You're going to get a project, you're going to learn how it goes, you're going to interact with the client. You can keep doing it if you love it, right? And it's steady. The benefit of a firm is that it's steady. The firm is getting the clients, and you just put in the hours you want, and you're doing the work. And then if you have that itch, you want to go hang a shingle somewhere, that's great. You can always do that. But starting at a firm just seems like kind of a low risk. Andy, is that fair?
I agree. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
And I know these firms are everybody's looking. If you're really talented at a fundraising management platform, like Razor's Edge, like Virtuous, like Salesforce for nonprofits, there is work for you. There's an unlimited amount of work for you if you want it, right? Get connected to a firm. How much does it pay? So again, I'll give you it depends, but I'll be very honest with you about kind of what we see in the world. So if you're going to go work at a firm and do some side stuff, let's say you're going to go take on a 20-hour database cleanup project. A firm, what I see for people that are applying to us, depending on your level of experience, it could be as low as $30 an hour. The really good ones, it could be as high as $50 an hour for you to do that sort of work. So that's a firm paying somebody as a contractor to do a specific project. It varies, of course, depending on your skill set. You're going to be in the lower end if you don't have a lot of experience. You're going to be probably closer to 50 if you have a great deal of experience. But then it also depends on how long the project is. So if you're doing an outsourced DBA role and it's constant, right, you're probably going to get paid a little bit less because you don't ever have to do anything else. Like you have your 40 hours, it's there. If you're just picking up a one-off consulting gig, doing like a data cleanup project, you might be able to charge a little bit more. Maybe you're not at 30, maybe you're at $40 because you know that you're then going to have downtime. Does that make sense, Andy?
Yeah, totally makes sense. Yep.
If you do this on your own, you can charge whatever you can get away with, right? So, and that's that. I'm being flipped there. It's not actually like that, but you can charge higher, right? Because if you're doing this on your own, you've quit your job, you've cut the cord, you are now a consultant. Projects can come up. You might charge $80 an hour, or you might charge a project-based fee, right, to do this service. And it's not $80 an hour. It's you estimating internally, how long do I think it's going to be? What rate do I want? And then tell the client, okay, it's going to cost you a total of $5,000 for this project. I'll take the risk that it might take more hours than what I thought, but at least the client gets kind of the defined scope and the exact number, which clients generally like. So that's, if people have questions about that, please let me know, but that's roughly what we see. Firms, the benefit, it's going to be consistent. They're going to have all the client relation stuff. Your job is just to nerd out on the data. If you hang your own shingle, you can charge a little bit more, but then you have to feed the beast, right? You got to get more clients. You have to factor in the downtime in between projects and everything else. In terms of how you get started, I would say, I mean, we're always looking. I know other organizations are always looking too. Just if you have a real talent for this and the ability to put in hours, firms are looking for you. Where we struggle, Andy, I think is we have side projects, right, that can be done on nights or weekends. And we have people that are amazing at that, right? They're just the best. But then we also have clients that are like, no, we want to outsource this DBA role. Like we need somebody during, maybe not the full 40 hours, but like during the 9 to 5. That's the hard part because you can't really dip your toe into that. Is that accurate?
Right. Yeah. I mean, you have to, you can't, I mean, you could try, but I don't think it would work very long. working a full-time job while simultaneously working.
Now we're in trouble with all the
during the
leaders
same
on
time,
there.
like, it's good till it's not, right? But yeah, and I would say for that group of people and some of the consultants that we have that work for us, in many situations they were a DBA at an organization and they just decided, hey, they wanted more flexibility and wanted to be able to work from home because they got a taste of it during COVID and just kind of didn't want to go back to work. So that opened their eyes up to, are there opportunities for me to kind of live this lifestyle where I can maybe take kids to a field trip in the middle of the day and still do these kinds of things, or go to a doctor's appointment, or shop for groceries when no one else is doing it, those kinds of things. But yeah, that is more of a thing. And I would say that with the people that Ashley and I have the opportunity to kind of interview and see, internally if they'd be a good fit for us, people are very clearly like, I want like as many hours as you can give me, and days are my thing, or I have no interest in that. And I really want to do it as kind of like truly a side hustle. Like, give me a 20-hour, a 40-hour project. I'll get it done in, 2 to 5 or 6 weeks or whatever. And then like on to the next project, or I'll take a while and then find me another project in a few months or something like that.
We saw after COVID, we saw a great surge, and I wonder how many people are feeling this. Nonprofits, again, can be wonderful places to work, and the missions are great, and we all have a soft spot. That's why we work here in this industry. There are a lot of DBAs who are like, okay, I worked remotely. I can't go back to cubicle land, right? Like, I just can't. Like, all the things Andy said, like, I can do my laundry, I can take my kids to school, I can do my job and be more effective, I can not commute. The idea of going back and sitting in that cubicle there when I didn't need to, it broke a lot of people. And that led to a lot of independent consultants, which is awesome, right? So if you're feeling that role, like, I encourage people to consider consulting, right? If now again, I'm getting in trouble with the people who are like, you're stealing our DBAs.
What to webinar? I'm going to leave my job today, boss. This is
But
cool.
this is forcing the leadership of your nonprofit to get better, right? Like, have a better experience, get more flexible with remote work, right? Don't put people in cubicles, whatever it might be. Somebody asked a question that popped up on, hey, what are organizations paying to outsource that whole role? Because this person's like, I want to help negotiate my salary. So we'll always be open and honest and candid. I mean, an organization that's going to outsource that top role of DBA is going to pay 100 grand a year to about 150 grand a year for that top tier. Now, keep in mind, that sounds like a big number, but now let's talk about it. What they're getting for that, they're not paying benefits, right? They're not paying taxes. It's just a flat number. They're not buying equipment for somebody, they don't have to house somebody, put them in an office. They don't have to give 401k stuff. Like, it's just a flat number. They're also getting the knowledge of that organization, the entire organization. So it's not just like we're hiring Joe and Joe may or may not know how to do everything. They're hiring PSG or whoever it might be, and they know how to do everything, right? They've got a donation page expert, they've got a reporting expert, they've got an automation expert. Like, that's a pretty attractive to a lot of folks. It usually works out to, I don't know, Ashley, maybe a wash or maybe a little bit more expensive, because after you factor in an employee of the caliber and the benefits, where do you think it lands?
A lot of times you're better off with hiring the consulting team, just because of the knowledge base that you're getting. You're getting so many more people. So you hire one person and they know only so much, where if you hire a consulting team, then you have, a dozen different heads thinking about a project. So
like, for this person that wrote in, if your question is, okay, I want to go negotiate my salary, so know the baseline, right? No, to outsource your role, if you're at a large organization, right? Sizable organization raising a couple $1 million at least a year, if not 15, 20, they can outsource your role for 100, 150 grand, and they're going to get experts across the board. If you're not at that level, you can go negotiate your way there, but they're also going to push back and say, you're one person, not 12. What happened? You go on vacation, like all the other things that we talk about. Yeah. But hopefully that's helpful. If you have more questions, again, ask. This is what this whole webinar is about, is for people to ask those questions of, what do things cost? What can I get paid? On and on. Okay.
And I think to your point too, Nick, like, part of that factor is if we're always on, right? So like, we don't take vacation, we don't take sick days. If you are a person that enjoys vacation and occasionally you or one of your family members gets sick, like, that's a disadvantage to your organization to keep you, as opposed to hiring outsourcing a DBA.
That's a what we call a segue, right? So let's talk real talk, like, from the consultant. So we did different stuff before getting in the consulting world. Ashley and Andy have done a whole lot of nonprofit in-house before doing this. I want to share a couple main points. Ashley, you want to talk about these first two at all? So even when Andy was saying, like, not a 9-to-5 job, what do we mean? Like, you made the transition.
Right, absolutely. So I came from an amazing job. I loved it. But I was working all sorts of of different hours and things like that. That doesn't change a whole lot when you move to the consulting world. So just setting the expectation. You aren't always, starting at one time and ending at one time because you've got the flexibility. So, and that's the part that I love in this role, is that I do have the flexibility to go pick up my kids at 3 o'clock every day and run them to an activity. But then, I'm sitting on the sidelines at hockey or dance or whatnot, typing away, or after they go to bed, 9 o'clock at night, I'm back at work, which works for some people and it doesn't work for others. So just knowing that about yourself.
I want to underline that 1,000,000%. Like PSG is that. Like you will see, like we're all about at the same stage of life where we have kids. Like and this happened after COVID. There's been articles written on it. Like there's 2 shifts now, right? It's not a 9 to 5 in our world, at least. It's a, drop the kids off, work till 3:30ish or so. You're handling kids and dance and everything else and doing a little bit. But then there's that second shift, right? From 9, in some cases, 9 to 11. I love that. It is the best thing in the world for me to be able to go run errands during the day and then have that after the kids are in bedtime. If you don't want that, do not get into consulting, right? It is just, I want to be very clear. Like I love it. I always feel guilty if anybody wants to join and they don't love that, because we are not, a structured punch in, punch out place, because your clients may be in different time zones, right?
And I would say that too. Like the clients assume that you are always working, even if you're not. They assume you're always working. You're going to get text messages, emails, just random requests, and the expectation is to kind of manage those expectations, but you're all going to put in nights and weekends even when you don't want to.
And it's so worth it. Let me just plug it now. It is so worth it. Oh my God, the quality of life, Ashley, I don't want to speak for you, but the quality of life, I know I do. I put in way more hours than I would a normal 9 to 5. But just the feeling of like the freedom of being able to choose when those hours are and how I'm doing it.
I love it. And for me personally, my husband travels. I have 2 littles. Like I have to have that flexibility. I mean, yes, I want to go to the grocery store without bringing my 6-year-old who asks for 50 things on the way. And just that little peace of mind and serenity is so great. And so being able to, multitask and, do the laundry while I'm on a Zoom call, like it just allows so much freedom. And I love that part.
That reminds me, we were talking, you bring your littles and asking for everything if they're at the grocery store. We were just talking as a firm. My wife doesn't like me to go to Costco because I'm that. I come back with carts full of stuff that we don't need. I'm just enamored with the big box warehouse stores. All right, 2 more. Consulting's an art and a science, and then doing the book. Okay, so art and science, what we're talking about here. Most of the folks on this call, and it just occurs to me, I don't know if Andy or Ashley, if you noticed, we have so many more anonymous attendees on this webinar than we've ever had before.
Unbelievable.
Yeah, shocked. Everybody's coming in anonymous today, like, which just it delights me to be that resource. Art and science, yes, database work is nerdy, technical math stuff. Consulting is not, right? If you want to be the nerdy, technical, really skilled person, go work at a firm. They can use you all day long. If you want to hang a shingle, you also have to have the other side. You have to deal with clients that really don't care if they get you the stuff on time. You have to deal with, all of this stuff, right? Like when we have some consultants who probably vibrated a little at this idea of like, well, I don't understand. The timeline was we're going to do this, this, and this because they're great at their job and they're used to that. And then you match them up with a consulting client who's like, oh yeah, we decided to change the scope of the whole thing, and also I'm out of town until next December. Like
for 3 weeks in a foreign country. Sorry, can't process gifts.
Yeah,
right.
it absolutely happens. So I just want to share that again. If you're doing the independent consulting, you've got to be left brain, right brain. There's a lot of that. If that is not you, that's fine. Go work at a firm, and they're going to love you because you're exactly what they need, and clients will love you in that defined role. Which speaks to the 4th bullet point. For all the folks that are thinking about jumping into the side hustle, and again, I encourage it. It is a great time. In fact, I think that's my final bullet. It's never been a better time to do side hustle, do consulting. Clients are open to it. Nonprofits are having a hard time finding people so they can outsource. There's never been a better time. But just know this, the work is the easy part, right? If you're worried about, oh, I don't know, maybe I don't know what I'm doing, you're going to figure it out and you'll be able to do a good job at the work. The hard part is the business side of it. You have to eat what you kill, right? That's how consulting works. You have to get a client, you service a client, and then you have to go out and find more. And many database folks that we talk to, like that's the part you struggle with. So just learning the whole, what can I charge? How do I get, what kind of projects do I like? Do I like doing one-off projects, or does that terrify me because then it's going to go away and I got to find another one? How do we get a long-term? Like there's The business side is what you need to focus your attention on. If you've been doing Razor's Edge or Virtuous for years, you've already got all the skills that you need, right? And you'll learn more because you'll get really sharp at it. It's the business part that's hard. Okay. I'm gonna answer a question, and then I have a couple of resources. Somebody asked about thoughts on like issues, norms around doing cross-border work. Like example, a US consultant doing work in Canada or vice versa. I am an attorney. I am not going to weigh in on the legalities of doing work in a foreign country. So it happens. Some people do it, and you register in all the right places, and you pay the taxes, and you do the things. Some people just do it as side hustles, and you don't really ask questions. I'm not going to weigh in on that. Andy, do you have something to say here?
I do have one thing I'd like to add. And just again, from a Blackbaud standpoint alone, right? So Blackbaud has like a US based version of Blackbaud, and then they have an international based version of Blackbaud in Australia, in the UK, in Canada. And the reason why is the rules and regulations. I mean, even in terms of like gift receipting and what you have to include and what is different. So if you are going to dance in that market, you need to be thoroughly informed about all the rules and regulations, because again, that organization that's hiring you is expecting you to know gift receipting rules, data privacy rules, and how things are set up within that database. Like that's the only thing I would caution you on there.
Yeah, you do not want to get out ahead of your skis on something like that, right? Like don't if you don't need to.
LLC will be bankrupt quick.
Keep the questions coming. So I'm just going through some final housekeeping things as people are writing their questions, and we'll tackle them all. If you found this helpful, many of you are already on it, I'm sure. We have this Ask Genius fundraising newsletter. It is not a frequent thing that clogs up your inbox. It's, hey, whenever we've done a research project or got a new webinar coming up, we send it out maybe once a month, and it's full of incredibly useful things, free downloads, templates, letters, pledge cards, our latest research. So you can go there. I'm sure Rob can drop that in the chat. If you want to know about Automate Genius, this is a link to do that. Again, Automate Genius only for Razor's Edge clients, but if you want to automate donor emails, if you want to automate tax receipts, if you want to automate some really messy reporting that you hate doing, and you wish you could just click a button, go check out Automate Genius. And if you haven't yet, I think most people on this call actually use Ask Genius already. If you haven't yet, check it out. It's the highest ROI thing in fundraising. I guarantee that. Spend a little bit of money, set personalized ask amounts for every single donor. You will raise so much more on your next appeal, right? What we see in terms of the average gift is just bonkers. So check out Ask Genius if you haven't yet. Ashley, any topics that we haven't covered? Anything you think people want to know that we haven't talked through yet?
I think just a few things on the consulting side and working with clients. So yes, definitely understanding the business side. It's also the relationship and the people side of things too. And that's part of the finesse and the art of it. That's very important. I think that was, for me, just understanding, like, you can only carry the ball so far too, like it's organize and project management and all of that stuff that you can be as a consultant. You have to rely on the client, the print vendor, the designer. Other people have to carry their weight. And I think I had the hardest time just accepting, like, you can prove all of these data points that this is the right way to do something and it'll work. And it's ultimately the client's decision on what they move forward with. So that was my probably biggest learning curve I'll leave you with.
Yes, it's frustrating, but to let that go, because Ashley's great, Andy's great. You're all professionals, right? Like, you want the best outcome possible. And it's hard when a client's like, oh, you know what? We're going to do this. And you know that it's not going to work, but that's what they want to do. That's fine. Like, that's their right. They're paying us to do it. You got to let it go. Andy, what about you? So I think we've answered most of the questions here.
We do. And I did see something come through on chat from Sherry here. She just wanted some more specifics about like using a lockbox and how, DBAs can be remote. And I would say that that's true both if you're trying to hire a remote DBA, or if you're a DBA that's like, hey, it would be kind of cool to work from home a couple days a week, right? More and more nonprofit organizations are using a lockbox, right? So rather than all of the gifts that people are giving coming directly to your organization, oftentimes they're either going to a financial institution, they're going to a third-party vendor that's opening the mail, sorting the mail, scanning the mail, making those electronic deposits to your bank account, and then sending you a data file. That data file will have, who made the gift, how much was the gift, what fund was it for, was it a pledge or was it a one-time gift, all those things. You're importing that information. Gifts are obviously batched, committed, and then ultimately it's up to you to acknowledge. So In some situations, people are remote DBAs and they have a printer in their house and they're just cranking everything out on the Canon printer. In other situations, they're processing the gifts and then sending a data file to, again, a third-party vendor, a printer that's taking that data file and sending off the gift acknowledgements in that way. So
And those can be,
it is becoming more and more popular.
and those typically are two different things. Like the lockbox is big, professional. This is what they do. Like they're sophisticated. You can use OK Fast Print down the street, right? For the like to send your you send them the letter. Like again, use Automate Genius. It'll automate the creation of the letter, drop it into SharePoint folder. Your job is to send the file over to market OK Fast Print, every other day, and they get it out the door. Like that's why I said there's never been a better time to get involved in the side hustle stuff, because honestly, part of this is probably job preservation for folks. Like, build this skill set, because if you're frustrated with your organization, there are other organizations that will value you. The tools, everything you need now to work remotely are so much better than they were, 3 years ago, 5 years ago, 10 years ago. Okay, I'm going to ask. We must have had a couple of people that hadn't signed up for the newsletter yet, because my phone has not stopped vibrating for like the last like 5 minutes. Just I'm like, what is happening? Is it an emergency? And my kids flunked out of school. Okay, Andy, question for you. What was the biggest surprise when you moved from, and then we'll wrap it up here. Biggest surprise moving from like nonprofit world to like consulting?
I would say the biggest challenge for me is I needed to take what I thought was best for me and like how I would do things and really adapt to what's best for the client, right? So I joke with my kids. I have a son who said, "Oh, what does your dad do for a living?" He's a consultant. What that means is people pay him for his advice. And I said, "And you, my son, are getting it for free." But sometimes neither my son nor the client take my advice, right? So I had to be comfortable with, I will serve it up to them, and sometimes they'll take it and sometimes they won't, right? Whereas when I was running an organization, it was like I was the person in charge, and whatever I said, people just did. So that was certainly, I think, the biggest thing for me was we can give them the ideas, but we can't ultimately make them do all the things that we want them to do, even if it's in their best interest to do those things.
Love it. I'm gonna wrap up a minute early, and also I don't know if we mentioned we have a webinar. So Sherry had asked about like lockbox and stuff. I know I love that we've been doing this so long that I can say this about any topic. We've got an amazing webinar exactly on that, on how do lockbox vendors work and gift processors and things like that. So be sure to check that out. You can go to that webinar page that Rob shared earlier. Thank you guys all so much. We love what we do. We love hosting these webinars. It's just invigorating to see from all the great folks out there and have these questions. So please, if you're interested, keep coming to them. Let us know if there's a topic you want us to tackle. We'll always give it to you straight and unvarnished. And if you haven't yet, check out Ask Genius, check out Automate Genius. That helps us keep the lights on, and with the added benefit of they're both amazing and you're going to love it. All right, Ashley, Andy, Rob, thank you guys so much. We'll see you on the next one.
Bye, everybody.